Six Jumping Jacks with Outside, recorded in about 1927, I think. And that was one of Harry Reese's band. We tend to favour that band. I like the sound, like the compressed sound of those light rail recordings from the mid to late 20s, while they were trialling that process for copyright reasons. All right, so we've got a few things lined up for tonight, and again, apologies if I'm interfering with that QSO down the band a little bit. I've moved up as high as I can, and I hope there's no one's caught in the caught up in the high frequency sounds. Right, so let's see what is next in line. Oh yeah, okay. I was going to have a little bit of another Bix Fest, because there have been some remarkable transfers uploaded late. I'm getting tongue-tied tonight. There have been a number of remarkable transfers uploaded lately, including some from the Wolverine Orchestra, which is sort of Bix's entrant into the jazz idiom. That's where the first recordings were made with the Wolverines, and including a recording of a song called Oh Baby, recorded in 1924 with the Wolverines. Now, this is a particularly special song. This is before he developed his distinctive style based on his I should say, obsession with French Impressionist music. Lots of whole tone scales and sort of unusual rhythmic characterizations based on Impressionism, the way he used hemiolas and offset the rhythm and stuff. But early days, he was much more conventional as a trumpet player, and you can hear these more or less mimicking Louis Armstrong, but with lots of inventiveness, and you can hear the signatures of Bix. So early Bix recording from 1924, VK3SL. Okay, whoa, it's got to the mic in time. Bix Beiderbecke and the Wolverine Orchestra from 1924 with a song called Oh Baby. They made quite a few records, the Wolverines, and then he had the Swiss City Six and a few other bands before he joined Gene Coldcat's orchestra for a period, and then moved on to the Whiteman umbrella, because there were so many groups under the auspices of Mr. W. And that's what we're going to hear now. We're going to move. Shall I do that now? I reckon I will do something first, because last week we had, 2 weeks ago, when I was last testing, we had a bit of a tribute to Mr. Goldberg. That's Max Goldberg, a trumpet player who featured in a lot of British dance bands, particularly Ray Noble and Ambrose. Played with those orchestras for a long period, but he also did session work with countless other bands, and including this one, which I just dug up. So it's called a group called the Rhythmic Eight, and I'm pretty sure he's on this. So I will have to find my way across to the other side of the bench here, and hopefully the ident will be a little bit more continuous. This is VK3SL, testing on 160 metres, 2 metres, and the Broadwave streaming service.
Fly upon a mountain, the distance interferes with the view, but anyone can see with half an eye that I'm crazy over you. It's hard to see a needle in the haystack, the haze in the way of a view, but anyone can see with half an eye that I'm crazy over you. You need a telescope to really get the dope, watch stars up in the blue, but you don't have to buy a telescope to spy that I'm in love with you. It's hard to see the bottom of the ocean, the water interferes with the view, but anyone can see with both eyes shut that I'm crazy over you.
And that was a real 78, a Zonophone, featuring the Rhythmic 8 with I'm Crazy Over You. And I think that does feature Mr. Goldberg in that recording. You heard an interview with Max Goldberg last week, and I found that particularly interesting. I listened to it a few times because there's a lot of detail in that interview which one can reference in relation to the later recordings of Ray Noble and Ambrose in particular, and there's a lot of anecdotal information there. So yes, so this is a test transmission on 160 metres and 2 metres on 147.475, testing on 2 frequencies. It's a chance to flex the muscles of the equipment here, and we use modulated sound for these tests. Nothing to do with entertainment whatsoever, and I stress that, strictly non-entertainment. So in the vein of completely boring the listener senseless, we're going to have another selection from Paul Whiteman now. Doesn't bore me senseless. This inspires me. It's amazing to hear these transfers from Mr. Prozoot. He's been very active, and he's been working with the Paul Whiteman Potato Head label, the Columbias, that he made after May 1928. He moved to Columbia then. There's a famous film of him tearing up the Victor contract when he moved to Columbia. And it was really the golden period with Whiteman. It's the time when he had a star-studded lineup, including Bix and Frankie Trambauer and Bill Rank and lots of others. Some great soloists in the band. And anyhow, but Mr. Prozoot's done a fab job in reinvigorating those recordings, bringing them to life. And they've always been a tiny bit muffled compared to the Victors. The Columbias have never, to my ears, sounded quite as good, although they're laminated pressings. The actual quality of the engineering is not quite as good, I don't think. That's my impression. But he's done really well in sort of opening up the sound. And I commend the latest uploads to anyone interested in Mr. Prozoot, because he does discuss there's a bit of dialogue with someone who sort of makes an oblique criticism of people who transfer the sound with modern equipment, and he makes a very strong defence in favour of preserving 78s without wrecking them with steel needles. And of course we all know that Mr. Prozoot's got access to a virgin collection, essentially, a collection of records which had never been played. So it's a unique situation, to say the least. Anyhow, the latest upload is a selection from 1928. Now, there's 4 songs here, but I'll see how we go. I might just sort of make a comment here or there, but I'll let them run more or less. The first one's Out of Town Gal. Then we hear Tain't So. It's an early Crosby. In fact, I think all these are Crosbys. Out of Town Gal's Rhythm Boys, Tain't So's Bing. Next one is Oh Miss Hannah, which is a personal fave of mine, and I really love the arrangement there. And there's another one as well on the list. I'll have to have a look. Let's see, Miss Hannah, and then Because My Baby Don't Mean Maybe Now. That's another one with the Rhythm Boys. Oh yeah, and there's I'd Rather Cry Over You. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know if we'll get to 5. Might play 2 or 3. Anyhow, I'll back announce them. Have a listen for the big solos. Every track features a big solo. They're always interesting. He's adventurous, and with the fairly conservative, well, I wouldn't say the arrangements are that conservative for their time. They're quite liberated, quite progressive. But Bix's solos are just out of this world, and he's really moving into completely new territory in the way that he stretches the rhythm and uses his whole tone scales and chromatic influences and expressive intonation, and look, you'll hear them. So big solos abound, and it sort of breaks out of the stricter structural frameworks of the Whiteman arrangements. But this is the golden era, as far as I'm concerned, the time when Whiteman engaged Bill Shallis, who was a genius, really. He was the arranger for the band, and we have these early Crosby recordings, and Crosby makes such a great jazz singer. It's a pity he sort of got stuck into crooning full-time from the 30s onwards, but these records he made in the 20s as a young man, I just give you display a fabulous sense of rhythm. And so we'll have a listen to the first one's Out of Town Girl of Mine. So here we go. Mr. Prozoot's realisation of the Potato Head Paul Whiteman records from 1928. A selection of them now. VK3SL testing.
Some sweet someone's coming this way. Some sweet someone's coming to say hello. Hello, hi-ho, come let's hop a cab. Let's get any old thing we can grab. Let's all meet her, there's no one sweeter I know. But da-da-da-da-da-da-da. You can rave and shout about your gals in town. Wait till you see that out-of-town gal of mine. They don't think I'm sweeter than sweet Mary Brown. Wait till you see that out-of-town gal of mine. Right now you think I'm not a smarty, but wait and hesitate until you see that certain party. Imagine Venus dressed in a blue gingham gown. Wait till you see that out-of-town gal of mine.
Hey, people, you should come to Arkansas. Meet a friend of mine, old Aunt Phoebe Law. She's known to everyone for miles around. She will help you when friends forsake you and troubles bear you down. For those who come her way are blessed when they hear her say, "'Tain't so, honey, 'tain't so." Spoke to the Lord and the Lord said, "No, 'tain't so, honey, 'tain't so." "'Tain't so, honey, 'tain't so." Tomorrow will bring something good, I know 'tain't so. I mean it just ain't so. Makes no difference what your problem may be. Just look up, brother, and I'm sure you will see. "'Tain't so, honey, 'tain't so." The devil said yes, but the Lord said no. "'Tain't so, honey, 'tain't so."
Okay, we've been listening to a selection of recordings from Paul Whiteman's orchestra made in 1928, just after the period where he moved to Columbia from Victor. It was a big move, and Columbia celebrated Whiteman by giving him his own coloured label. They're called potato head labels because it's got a big picture of Mr. Whiteman's face, flanked by multicolours, and it's sort of the, he had that sort of currency, I suppose. He was someone with who was able, like Melba having her own lilac label. Whiteman had his own multicolour special label for Columbia. But we just heard Taint So, Honey Taint So. Now that's a Crosby number, but the big solo on that is just amazing. I reckon, I know people probably get sick of me doing this, but I'd like to have another listen to that big solo, and I'll just fade in and hear the last little bit of the song, and then we'll keep it going, because the next song is Oh Miss Hannah, and that's a personal fave of mine, but I promise I won't repeat that one. So we hear a little bit of Taint So, because that's probably one of Bix's most outrageous or fascinating solos, I think, and then we'll hear Oh Miss Hannah, and then following that we can hear Because My Baby Don't Mean Maybe Now, all from 1928. So let's see what I can do about this. This is VK3SL test transmission, and we are listening to the music of Mr. Whiteman. Here we go. All right, I'll go back a little bit further. And very shortly, we'll hear Mr. Bix. Here we go.
that you're coming out tonight. The mockingbirds am singing and the moon am shining bright. The roses am a nodding and a swaying in the breeze. Get on your Sunday, go to meeting clothes and come along, please. When the preacher questions me, I'll say yes sir, yes sirree, because my baby don't mean maybe now. I just got a little letter just yesterday, and now I feel a little better, and so I say, life is short and mighty sweet, but I know mine is quite complete, because my baby don't mean maybe now.
Okay, we've just heard a selection of songs played by the Paul Whiteman Orchestra in 1928. These are records he made for Columbia shortly after moving to the label in May 28. And we heard Out of Town Girl, Tain't So, Oh Miss Hannah, and then Because My Baby Don't Mean Maybe Now. And next time we might play, there's a couple more on that list there. These are all uploads from Mr. Prozoot, who's been very active of late. And for those who have been following Prozoot, it's well worth having a look at the dialogue underneath the under each track because he's being a lot more active in contributing to discussions. And it's starting to, a little bit more about his personality and his lifestyle and interests are starting to materialise. So it's quite fascinating to understand the man behind the transfers. I was listening to them here with the Leak Sandwich speakers, which are very good on bass for 78s particularly. And I've never heard those songs sound so clear. Those particular recordings I knew very well from an anthology that my art teacher gave me when I was at high school. And I used to listen to them over and over, but they're always muffle missions. And, you really struggle to get hear how the ensemble really gelled because it was just sort of thickly textured and compressed. But really, it teases that out miraculously. And there's grain in the lower frequencies, and you can hear the instrumental groups, and there's a lot more musical information. And I honestly don't know how he does it. He still hasn't quite given the game away, but we know that he uses modern equipment. But I'd have to say he may be using a moving coil cartridge and finding a stylus fit that's just perfect for unplayed records. And something, it wouldn't surprise me he's using intelligent EQ because it's unfathomable how clear they sound for that period. So hats off to Mr. Prozoot. We look forward to his uploads, and they've been very prolific of late. This is a test transmission on 160 metres and relaying on 2 metres, and also there's a streaming service. If anyone wants to go to my QRZ page, you'll find a link to the streaming service, and I use the Broadwave protocol. It's a software package that seems to stream okay, and a few people listen on the stream each week, so that can be found by looking at my QRZ page. So that's the story. These are test transmissions which occur each Friday night. So I give the stretch of the legs a little bit of the transmitter and the associated processing equipment here, and it's an opportunity to explore modulated sound via historic recordings which need to be played. They yearn to be played. All right, we'll have another one of Prozoots now. This is something that's still equally as astonishing, and it's actually quite a bit later. We jump forward to 1943. Now, I personally have never been much of a fan of Frank Sinatra. I've never really enjoyed his singing much at all, particularly his later recordings. He was always singing out of tune. He's always had a fantastic sense of rhythm. There's absolutely no doubt about that, and a great musical line in his earlier stuff. But the grain in his voice and the character of his voice never really did it for me. Until I heard this recording from 1943, a very early Sinatra. He's in his early 20s. And it's from a radio broadcast. It's a test, and he's playing with Axel Stordale's orchestra. And it's off a sort of a air check or something. It's an interesting one. There's a big story behind this too, but I'll leave people to do their own research. If you look up the Prozoots offerings from this week, you'll see it there. And there's a bit of debate about what's really going on here. But anyhow, Frank Sinatra actually announces it, and I've never ever heard him sing this well. I've heard a couple of his recordings he made with Tommy Dorsey around about this period, and they're quite good, but I've never really had a chance to hear the early Sinatra, which sort of leads me to think that he burnt his voice out at a very young age. But anyhow, this is quite fascinating, I find. So I don't usually go this late. This is modern for me after the 1943. Gosh. And as I speak, I'm watching ants crawl out of the faders here. We've had an ant invasion here, and there are ants everywhere, and they're just coming out of everything. So somehow in the circuitry there are ants wandering around. I wonder if there are any ants warming themselves up by the 807s. I wonder. All right, let's have a listen to Mr. Sinatra, and he announces this, and let's see what's happening here. VK3SL, I'm testing.
Hello, Virginia. This is Frank Sinatra speaking. I'm awfully sorry that you couldn't come to lunch with me Thursday, but your dad said the doctor wanted you to stay in bed a little longer. But I hope you're well enough to return to Douglas School for the opening. Right now, we're over here at the rehearsal for the Lucky Strike show, and while we're here, I thought maybe I'd like to do a tune for you. So, Ginny, here it is, and I hope you like it. Won't you tell me when we will meet again? Sunday, Monday, or always. If you're satisfied, I'll be at your side. Sunday, Monday, or always. No need to tell me now what makes the world go round. When at the sight of you my heart begins to pound and pound. What am I to do? Can't I be with you? Sunday, Monday, or always. Won't you tell me when we will meet again? Sunday, Monday, or always. If you're satisfied, I'll be at your side. Sunday, Monday, or always. To tell me now what makes the world go round. When at the sight of you my heart begins to pound and pound. And what am I to do? Can't I be with you? Sunday, Monday, or always. Well, Ginny, good luck, honey. See you next time I get to California. My best wishes to your brother Freeman. And get well soon, won't you? God bless you. Goodbye.
Okay, that was an ear check from Frank Sinatra from 1943. Absolutely glorious and amazing arrangement, and plenty of detail in that recording too. Very, very fine for that time. So what's next, we wonder. So it's great providing lots of good source material for me in doing these test transmissions for sure. Okay, last time we had a selection of, we had a little Boswell Sisters. I played a Boswell Sisters track, I think it was Roll on Mississippi. Then I played a recording of one of Kate's ensembles from early 90s singing the same song. She arranged it from the song. Well, I found another one, and so we'll have a listen first to the Boswell Sisters 1932 singing Crazy People, and then we'll hear the choir called the Melbourne Vocal Ensemble in 1990, I think it was, singing the same piece in a sort of contemporary arrangement, but pretty much the same. So back to back. Have a listen to Crazy People. This is from a film called The Big Broadcast in 1932, VK3SL.
Broadcast would be quite complete without those three little girls from New Orleans. Permit me to present the Boswell Sisters, Connie, Vet, and Martha.
Crazy people like me, go crazy old people like you. Dopey people, daffy people like me, go crazy over things you do. While we are underneath the moon above, you've got me acting just like a loon. It must be love, sweet love. Crazy people like me, go crazy over people like you. Crazy people like like you. Crazy people like the things you do when we are under the moon above. You got me acting just like a loon. It must be love. Crazy people like you, 'cause lovebirds of a feather always flock together. It's an old custom of the heart that keeps folks from drifting apart. Now that's the reason, baby, that I call you baby. We're each other's counterpart. Crazy people, crazy people, crazy people, crazy people, crazy people like me go crazy over people like you. Wow, goofy people, daft people, daft people, daft people like me go crazy over things you do. Wow, no money for raven lot, sweet angel child. It's just a habit I've got. You drive me wild. Crazy people, daft people, daft people, daft people like me go crazy over things like you. Wow.
And we now jump ahead 60 years, and here's the same song. Whoops. Oh, why did that happen? Try it again.
Crazy people,
Crazy people, crazy people, crazy people like me go crazy over people like you. Groovy people, daffy people like me go crazy over things you do. When we are under the moon above, you got me acting just like the loonies must be love, sweet love. Crazy people like me go crazy over people like you. Crazy people like you. Crazy people like things you do when we are under the moon above. You got me acting just like it must be love. Crazy people like you, 'cause lovebirds of a feather always flock together. It's an old custom of the heart that keeps folks from drifting apart. Now that's the reason, baby, can I call you baby? We're each other's counterpart. Crazy people like me go crazy over people like you. Groovy people, daft people like me go crazy over things you do. No money to pay the rent, sweet angel child. It's just a habit I've got. You drive me wild. Groovy people, daft people like me go crazy over things you do.
Yes, we just heard the Melbourne Vocal Ensemble from 1990, I think, 1991. And that was a splinter group from the Ormond Choir. Kate used to sing in the Ormond Choir, and they formed a contemporary group to sing at corporate functions and things. And they Kate made the arrangement of that and a few other Boswell Sisters songs. And I just happened to find a cassette of one of their performances when I was cleaning up the other day, so it's nice to sort of hear them in sharp relief, the two versions of Crazy People. The former, the one with the Boswell Sisters, is from a film called The Big Broadcast. It's actually a movie, and you see them with a huge microphone in front of them, the big carbon mic, and it's a delight to behold. It's great to see them actually perform. They're so animated. Okay, so we'll just click off that one. We won't save the file because it's been done. And and we'll see what's next. What's next? I was going to do an OTR segment, but because I was in the cleanup, I'm switching on the cart machines as I speak. In the cleanup, I found some carts. Holding another box of carts under the house. So let's have a listen. Let's see what's here. What's this one? Oh. I don't think we need that one. I'll try a different one. Oh, this is fun. I'll put this one. Have a listen to this. This is from 3KZ, I think.
Darling, how would you like to choose from hundreds of whole rolls of the most exciting carpets in Melbourne?
Oh.
Colours brilliant, patterns beautiful, prices practical.
Oh, honey, where is this fabulous place?
Honey, Kate Carpetland is not a place. It's places. 7 places.
Oh, where are these places?
Where do you live?
Oh, I haven't started living yet.
We'll start now at one of these places. Mulgrave, 752 Springvale Road. Moorabbin, 871 Nepean Highway. Nuttawading, 335 Whitehorse Road.
Oh.
Frankston, 30 Young Street. Dandenong, 217 Princess Highway. Footscray, 190 Berkeley Street.
Oh.
And Geelong, 115 High Street in Belmont.
Oh, I just started.
That finished very abruptly. These are fun. I'll shove another one, another cart machine. What's this one?
Airport West Shopping Town. We're on your side. We're on your side.
Ah, I'm short. I might fast forward through. See if there's anything else on that one. All right, we'll just keep going through these. This one's Myers. Let's have a listen to this.
Hey, guess what I've just found in the Maya Christmas sale catalogue?
I give in.
Miss Melbourne. T-shirts with stripes, plain T-shirts, all over prints, dip-dyed ombres for $3, $4 and $5.
That sounds okay. And over here on page 17, there's a terrific range of men's knit shirts.
Really? How much?
Only $3.99.
Oh, wow. If you're looking for fashions or presents or things for the house, the Maya Christmas sale catalogue is well worth looking into.
And the Maya Christmas sale's on right now at all Maya stores.
Okay, here's another one.
Airport West Shopping Town. We're on your side. We're on your side.
Oh, that's okay. That's all there is on that one. Let's see what else is here. Gonna get them in the right spot. This one doesn't sound too good. I think the pad's gone on this one, so that goes in the bin. I'll put it aside. I might dub these off like Mr. Stew did. What else? I'll try this one here. This one's got nothing on it either. Well, we might have to preview a little bit more comprehensively, I think. We'll see what happens. Stop. Play. No, nothing on that one. Take that out. Since there's football match, that'll be fun. Bloody football. It's all going to start again, folks. Back to football season.
This Saturday, 3KZ covers the 1975 Grand Final replay. Join Jack Dyer and yours truly, Ian Major, from 1:15 on 1180 radio for all the uninterrupted action of Kangaroos and Hawks. Australia's top football panel will be at the other grounds to keep you informed of all the highlights in the second round of the 76 season. It's brought to you on 3KZ by Carlton and United Breweries.
All right, we'll make that our segment for today. I'll go through this. There's a whole box of them. I'll go through the others and see if I can find anything of interest rather than just sort of pick them out at random. I did hear that Kai Carpet one. I think that is pretty classic. So there we go. That's our OTR segment, and we'll have to keep moving because I had a few classical things lined up. It's been an interesting week, actually, because you might remember me mentioning that we had a visit from John Hanna, who's a record collector in Sydney. Now, John came down to Melbourne and stayed with Mr. L, or visited Mr. L, and when they came out here and we were playing 78s all afternoon and talking shop, which is something I don't usually get to do on that riff on that subject. And he's a really quite a dedicated collector. And he's recently taken the initiative of putting some of his rarer recordings up on YouTube. He's been quite inspired by a number of other people who've done the same. And so it's exciting because upon returning to Sydney, he's just put up heaps and heaps of really rare classical recordings, and he's done a fab job. They sound really good. And so it's a great initiative, and I'm going to follow suit and start putting up classical stuff soon. In fact, I might piggyback off some of his, playing some, uploading some of the same artists, so there can be a bit of inertia. You never know; it might even get 3 or 4 hits. So this is exciting stuff. We're hitting the big time here. But one of the recordings is an artist I've always wanted to hear, and it's one of those sort of remarkable Australian stories that's there's so many tales like this. I haven't got the specifics of the biographical information, so I'm just riffing on this. But there was a chap called Edward Goll who was a piano teacher at the Con. He taught at the Melbourne Conservatorium, and I used to know an old lady. In fact, I think she's still alive, Judy Hall. I think she's nearly 100. But she studied with Edward Goll in the 40s. And she used to talk about him. I used to ask her about him. And he was an extraordinary gentleman. He could play all Bach's 48 preludes and fugues in any key at the drop of a hat. He had the ability he had such incredible musicianship that he could basically play any piece in any key. And that's just such an astonishing achievement. She said that it was overwhelming to be around someone with that sort of gift. Well, how he ended up in Australia is interesting. He came out as an accompanist to an artist. Now, as I said, I don't have the biographicals, so I just understand he came out as an accompanist in 1910 out to Australia, and he fell in love with someone out here and decided to stay, and then that's it. He became a part of the Australian musical establishment. But prior to that, he'd been a very celebrated musician in Europe. He'd had a huge career, meteoric career, and he was a student, interestingly, of Dvorak. Now, that's really significant because Dvorak only had a few students, and people might know that Dvorak is probably the greatest Czech composer and one of the great luminaries of 19th century romantic music. But Mr. Goll, as a child, studied with Dvorak and in the 1890s. So it's just incredible to think that someone with that heritage was present on the Australian scene. Now, Edward Goll, before he went back to Europe a couple of times in the 20s, and on one of those trips he made some records for Brunswick. They're incredibly rare. I've never seen any, but John had one in his collection and he's put it up online, and I'm completely blown away. I think it's just the most amazing piano playing. In fact, it's I think it's sort of in a class of its own. He plays a piece which we had to sort of identify. I knew it straight away because it's actually from one of Bach's violin partitas, but we had to establish the transcription, and it's actually a transcription by Bach himself from I think a suite or a small sort of set of pieces, and it's an allegro. It's in D minor, so we satisfy the minor key element, and he's playing staccato. But have a listen. If you listen carefully, there are so many shades of staccato. It's incredible, and the way he voices the different the different musical lines and the way he shapes his staccato, I think it leaves Glenn Gould for dead. Now, Glenn Gould's the greatest staccato man I've ever heard until now. There's actually recordings also of Busoni who exhibiting incredible ability to play staccato. But well, this takes the cake, I think. So we'll hear this. It's there's two pieces. The first one's this allegro in D minor, which architecturally is, I think, a miracle. And then he plays a courant, which has got, again, beautiful sense of musical line. It's not so staccato. But I will follow the allegro with another recording of it afterwards. So we'll won't get ahead of myself here. We'll just hear one thing at a time. So the pianist is Edward Goll, G-O-L-L. And we'll hear the allegro in D minor, BWV 964. It's actually a transcription of BWV 2002-0023, I think. Yes, one of the violin partitas. Anyhow, subclause upon subclause. Back to Mr. Goll. We're hearing the allegro, and have a listen to this playing. It's totally astonishing. VK3SL testing. Yeah, we heard two recordings from Edward Gold, who was born in 1884 and died in 1949. And he lived a greater part of his life in Australia, and he worked at the Con for quite some time, from wartime onwards. And we heard the Bach's Allegro in D minor, BWV 964, and also his Courant in A major, BWV 824. So two works by J.S. Bach featuring the astonishing pianism of Edward Gold. And what an amazing story that is. It's had 5 views this week. Isn't that incredible? 5 views for something so amazing. Well, the Allegro in D minor, I think architecturally is incredibly interesting, the way he plays that. Another recording of that very same piece from the famous Bach Sonata No. 2, the BWV 1003 it is a recording of that work by Enescu, which it registers very highly in my esteem. People are sort of probably a little bit used to me waxing lyrical about Enescu. Another artist with profound insights, but here's another version of that same piece, which is very knowing and again characterized by by the way he colours the voices and the way the voices interplay. It's just so much in this piece. It's incredible. So we'll hear Enescu. Now, Enescu's well past his prime here, but in a way, he throws. That's a good thing because he throws caution to the wind and he doesn't care about mistakes and he just plays with utter musical conviction, and his musicianship completely transcends the failing technique. But there's so much musically in this performance of the same work by George Enescu in the same year, actually. 1949, not the same year. It's the year that Gold died. Anyhow, Mr. Enescu. The emboldened protean playing of Georgianescu playing Bach's the Allegro from Bach's Sonata No. 2, BWV 1002, and it's just amazing how those lines usurp each other at the end. That sense of musical architecture, and I love hearing players when they're sort of on the way out in a way, but their musical message is still really, really clear, and the fact that they're not trying to be careful means that you just get something that's full of risks and incredible excitement. It's the way music should be, I think. Too much careful playing around. When you hear playing like that, it's so incredibly exciting. So, yes, I thought it would be a nice one little compliment to the recording of Edward Gold playing the same piece. Now, I should refer to John Hanna's site for those who are interested in following it. You never know, he might even get 6 views on some of these uploads. It's called Vintage Sounds. That's the name of the site, Vintage Sounds, and you can hear he's put up about 20 records in the last week. So celebrating Mr. Hanna and his initiatives. There's a lot of work, and he's done a great job, and he's certainly fleshed out the stories really well and bringing these artists to life, because they're not really very well represented anywhere online, and it takes care and time to do that. So and I'm delighted with his transfers. He doesn't over process. He just basically puts them up raw for people to culture to their own liking. Okay, another one now. We'll hear the great Spanish cellist Gaspar Casado, who's personally a favourite cellist of mine. I love Casado's playing as much as I love Casals' playing, and he's going to play the Evensong by Schumann, another beautiful lyrical performance, very eloquent performance. This time, Mr. Casado. Yeah, what an amazing sense of line. That was Gaspar Casado playing the cello. He was performing Evensong by Schumann. That was recorded in 1928. And, yeah, I particularly have, in particular, like Casado's playing. He had that same sort of diction element that the Casals had. In fact, he was a student of Casals for a period in the early part of the century. He was Casals' only student until in these early days, and you can hear that Casals' influence because the music speaks as well as sings. Just that syllabic diminuendos. Okay, we move on and we'll hear another recording from Mr. Vintage Sounds, aka John Hanna, and we have Michel Parastro this time. Now, Michel Parastro was a Leopold student, and Leopold was the preeminent Russian teacher at St. Petersburg Conservatory in the early days of the 20th century, 20th century, and he had many famous students, including Yasha Heifetz and Misha Elman, and a host of others. Milstein was another one of our students, but Parastro was as well, the artist we're about to hear. Parastro, he could have done anything really with his career, but he decided to become a concertmaster of the San Francisco Orchestra and then later on the New York Phil. So he sort of held the principal, probably the most prestigious orchestral positions of the time, and he lived from 1891 to 1970. Astonishing player. And he plays the Carnival Russe by Wieniawski here in 1928. It's on a Brunswick, pretty rare record. It's had a phenomenal 2 views, this one. And you'll hear him at the end. One of those views I played was he playing it to a work colleague at work today, who violin teacher, violin is a well-known player in Melbourne, and because there's a technique towards the end of this, it's a virtuoso piece, and he does this high-speed like spasm trill, and I've never heard that technique played by anyone, and we were sort of marvelling at the how the heck he did it. So it's something interesting. You'll hear it towards the end. It's in the last variation. It's like a super fast tremolo, but it must be like a spasm tremolo. That's how we surmised it. So we'll, wonder what you think. Anyhow, we'll have a listen to Michel Parastro from 1928. This is VK3SL. how's that for a virtuoso? You hear that sort of that trill in the last variation, that incredibly intense sound. I've never heard that done by anybody else, and I recall hearing that recording in a violin anthology, and that was marvelled on, was that technique. So interesting to hear Mr. Perastro. And he made the choice not to be a soloist, but to work as a concert master for the American orchestras. But there are a lot of stories about him, and I think a lot of soloists who played with those orchestras were quite intimidated by it because they knew that the concert master was probably a better player than they were. He lived until 1970, so he certainly had a long career. But that recording made in 1928. So yes. Okay, it's getting close to 1 o'clock. All right, I'm going to change gear now. We'll change gear. We'll have a listen to something contemporary. I'm sort of trying to inhabit a more contemporary music zone and going through my old uni notes and challenging myself to listen to music that I wouldn't otherwise listen to. So, but this is pretty accessible actually, because I'm going to play some minimalist music and we're going to hear some Steve Reich, and very accessible music, but and very hypnotic. So this might actually send people a bit off to sleep. I'm going to play some of his phase music. He wrote quite a few pieces where the music's slightly out of phase between different sections of the ensemble, and you get all these sort of offset rhythms start to occur, and it actually plays with your brain. So be prepared. It might sort of take you somewhere. It might drive you nuts. It might make you switch off. I don't mind, but see what you think. You may have even heard it. The first one is famous clapping music, which I've actually participated in this before, and so it involves just a very, very simple rhythm, which is clapped singularly first, and then someone else plays exactly the same rhythm, but one half a beat late, and then the next one's another half a beat late, and it's layered up, and it creates all of these sort of wonderful, remarkable offsets. So it's a percussion piece, but with very interesting use of rhythm, with just the same, I think it's just the same rhythmic cell which has just been displaced. So see what you think of this. Steve Reich's clapping music, and I think he wrote this about 1972 or something. This is VK3SL testing. It takes a moment for this one to fire up. Gives us a little introduction for two performers, 1972. wonder how that worked with the echoey acoustic there. There are other versions of it with in a dry acoustic which may have come through better. But basically, both parts are playing the same thing, but one's slightly offset. Each there's a constant sort of displacement in relation to the first line. So it's an interesting one to look at on the score, but it's just about extra beats thrown in, but the same rhythmic cell. So that was Steve Reich's clapping music, one of his phase pieces. He wrote another one too called Piano Phase, and he wrote some marimba phase. But I thought I'd put this one on. This goes for a while. So sit back. It's very hypnotic, but it has a similar effect but with greater complexity. So yeah, it's called Steve Reich's Piano Phase. Now, when did he write this? 1967, I think. So see what you think. I think Mr. Yaroslav Kovaricek would quite like this one here because it has a very ambient effect. Anyhow, see what you think. VK3SL testing, and I'm going to close my eyes and see what this does to me. We heard Piano Phase for two pianos, written by Steve Reich in 1968. Well, I put the pillow on the floor and closed my eyes, and it was quite a sonic experience, I have to say. I don't know if you felt the same, but that sort of phase music can be quite hypnotic. And there's a lot more where it came from. Steve Reich was a master of exploring that idiom. So, yeah, quite an indulgence. 20 minutes of the same 5 notes. To finish then, I think we'll have a something like we can't go backwards after that, but I thought it would be nice to play something, early work of Olivier Messiaen. And this is a work he wrote for the On Martineau, the very early electronic instrument, the oscillator, and where you vary the amplitude by moving your hands around a wire. It was invented in the 1920s, I think, and it's an instrument that Messiaen explored a lot. Now, this piece is an early work of Messiaen's. It's called Oraison, and it's a work that he actually explored further for his quartet for the end of time. He actually reappropriated this movement. I can't remember which movement it is from the quartet, but it's one of those. I think it's the praise. Yes, it says yes, the praise of the eternity of Jesus, the fifth of the eight movements of the quartet, end of time. Well, that was written when he was in a concentration camp, but this is prior to that time. And so, yeah, in its earlier incarnation. So it's written for the On Martineau, and an interesting instrument. And it goes for about 6-7 minutes, and then I'll switch on 2 meters. And if there's anyone standing still, I'm happy to have a chat. And I noticed there's still a QSO going down below. I was having a look earlier on the SDR until it timed out. I've had my 90 minutes worth. But, yeah, thank you for your indulgence. Hang in there for the long show if you have. See what you think of this piece. And, we should be right here on for each Friday. I've finished with holidays now. Back to the grind, back to reality. But I've got a little bit more breathing space this year than I had last year. So hopefully more time for hobbies. That's the plan. All right, let's hear some early Messiaen from 1937. This is VK3SL saying cheers for now, and I'll listen back a bit later.